I actually think that inventory is still going to go up pretty quickly, and the main reason is due to pre-sale market. On the screen, you can see that we are seeing a record number of under construction for new builds in 2022 across Canada. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So for the first video of 2023, I want to jump right into the real estate market and just take a quick look at what happened last year and also what kind of trend we may be expecting for 2023. Now before we start, make sure you hit the like button, and also we have our private Facebook group where you can join. We have 5,000 members in there, and you can ask questions in there or post any useful articles that you have and share with other people. To join, check out the link in the description below. Now without further ado, let's jump into today's video. Now obviously we have seen a good amount of drop across Canada. I'm sure in the last 3 months you have been seeing a ton of articles or postings probably around Facebook or online on how much the Canadian real estate market has dropped. And taking a quick peek at Wowers data, which tracks the official real estate board data, we can see that both Vancouver and Toronto have seen a massive downturn in terms of transaction, not even half of what they were selling a year today. Obviously, this is not a surprise since the mortgage stress tests have went from 5% to a 7%. However, what was interesting is that Toronto's detached and townhome sale price have dropped a lot more compared to the Vancouver side. The only property type that were similar between the two cities were condo, where on the Toronto side, it has barely moved at all, and on the Vancouver side, it has actually gone up on a month-to-month basis. Now keep in mind the data you're looking at here is just on end of November, so it's compared to last November 2021, which is where the market has not peaked yet. The real peak in the real estate market happened between, I would say, February or March of 2022. So if you are actually looking at from a peak to current price drop, it's way more than what was shown on the screen. But I'm willing to bet that even for condo, you are not going to see anywhere more than 5 to 10% drop at most. For detached and townhome, you're probably going to see more into the 15 to even the 25% range. Now, also keep in mind this is just an average for the whole area that you're looking at. The further you go away from the city core, you are going to see a much bigger drop. For example, in Langley, Vancouver, you're seeing a 25%. In North Surrey, it has recorded of a 33% drop. But yeah, these difference in performances in terms of property types were very in line of an old video we put out earlier looking at, historically whenever there's a massive rate hike, what is going on in the real estate market in Canada. And we've seen that for the last 2 times it has happened. Condo is the only property that is very resilient to price pressure, and in some pockets of months, it actually does pretty well. Now, this is something we're going to talk about later on, but I would also expect condos to continue to outperform the other 2 property types going into 2023 and may even trend upward. Now, on the other hand, with all these huge drops happening across the detached space, the sticker price has gone down significantly, but did the real cost of owning a home gone down as well? Well, unfortunately, the answer is no, it actually went up quite significantly. So let's just take a look at a random detached home in Vancouver as an example. Now, a detached home in Vancouver can easily cost $2.5 million before the rate hike, so which will be around 1.5% mortgage rate. With 20% down, which is $500K, you are going to borrow about $2 million. And if the interest rate persists for 25 years, in total, you would have paid the first $500K down pay plus $2.3 million in mortgage payments. So your total cost of owning this 2.5 mil home in 25 years is about 2.9 mil. So after the rate hike and across the board, we've seen anywhere around 20% drop. So let's say it has dropped 20%. Your 2.5 mil home is now you can buy it for $2 million. Now let's say you still have the same $500K from a year before, which you can put into the home. Borrow $1.5 million to complete the sale, but it's now at a 5% mortgage rate. We spread that over 25 years, your total cost is going to be $500K that you put down plus $2.7 million in mortgage payment, which brings you to $3.24 million to own this $2 million home right now in 25 years if rates don't change. So even though this home has dropped 20% after a year, if you have bought into it today, even though you're entering at a lower price, if the rates do not change, they stay at around the 4 to 5%, you are actually going to end up paying $300K more than the first person. Now, obviously, in reality, you don't actually pay $300K more apple to apple because the first person is still going to face the higher interest rate whenever they renew their existing mortgage. It's not like they're immune to this rate hike. But just trying to illustrate that while sticker price has gone down, real cost of owning a home actually went up, and which will affect people's affordability, which is also a reason why we see there's so little transaction going on for detached space, and also another reason to expect this will hold true going into 2023. So with that out of the way, let's jump into this year, which is what we care about, and look forward and see what we can expect in the real estate market in Canada. Now, at the end of the day, no matter what people say, it's just a game of supply and demand when it comes to house prices. Now, for demand, there are a couple of things we need to look at. There are population growth, saving rates, financing ability, and also government policies. As for supply side, we need to look at existing inventory, active listing, pre-sale, and also the rental market right now. So starting with demand, let's look at population growth. Now on this, there is actually a huge upward pressure. And if the real estate market is to plateau going into 2023, as in the price will not drop any further than what we have seen, I would say it would largely due to population growth. Comparing to the last 5 years, 2022 actually shows the highest population growth according to StatsCan. Now, this is no surprise because government is also being extremely aggressive with their immigration target and policy. They were targeting 400,000 new PR every year for last year, all the way moving up to 500K target by 2025. Now, not every one of these new PR will be eligible buyers or potential buyers. As we can see on the screen, there are quite a few of refugees and other special programs, which suggests that they probably don't have the financial capacity to buy right away. But nevertheless, there is still the economic class and the family class, which consists of quite a bit of new PR that will be coming in, and for sure at least a good chunk of them will be potential buyers. Now, I've had people point out to me last year that, hey, these people are not new entry. Most of them are already existing, residents in Canada. So it's not like there's a bunch of new people, 500K people coming in, bringing new money into the country and just buying up all the real estate. Now, I would only agree with this sentiment if we're talking about the rental market, because that is true. Most of them are already in the Canada, so they are renting already. But on the buyer side, not so much, because before they become a PR, there is the foreign buyer tax of up to 20%, and there's also the recent foreign buyer ban. I'm not quite sure if it affects them, but nevertheless, it does make it very unattractive to buy anything before they become a PR. So the fact that government is targeting almost 500,000 new PR every year does actually suggest that these will be new potential buyers entering the market every year. But next, let's talk about the saving rate as well. Now, on this side, it will actually have a downward effect, because obviously with how high inflation is, not many people are able to save a lot for at least the last year. Yes, wage growth has been pretty good, around the 5 to 6%, but it's really nothing compared to a 7% plus inflation that we have been seeing all year. Interestingly though, while I was doing a research looking at people's growth saving rate, while we are significantly down from 2020 and 2021, we're actually not as low as 2016 to 2019. So there is still a little bit more saving for last year, but yeah, it's significantly less than before. On to financing. As we have said, mortgage stress tests are now a higher amount of either 5.25% or 2% plus your current mortgage rate. And since most mortgage are at the 5%, which means everybody is trying to stress test at a 7% benchmark. So what that means is before people were able to get 5x to 6x their gross income whenever they buy a property, now it's more like 4x and sometimes maybe even 3x, even assuming they have no other debt outside. We've recently gone through several mortgage cases with our clients looking to buy the properties. There were a lot of cases where brokers are coming back after 2 months or right before completion, letting them know they can no longer qualify for the amount they were hoping for. It has to be slightly lower because of the benchmark just keeps going up. So this obviously has hurt a lot of people able to make the offer or able to buy the property they're aiming for. And this is also very important. We need to keep in mind, I think it's going to create a ripple effect into the 2023 trend. And finally, for the demand side, let's take a look at the government's policy. And one of the most interesting policy is the new foreign buyer ban that has been in effect this year. Now, while this does sound very good to ban all the foreign buyers, In reality, I feel like this has no effect on the demand side whatsoever. And to support this, I'm going to quote a research paper done from Journal of Housing Economics titled Foreign Buyer Taxes and House Prices in Canada, A Tale of Two Cities. And in there, I will specifically talk about this quote. On the one hand, the proposition of home purchase by foreigners is relatively small, varying from 3 to 5% depending on the data source. So the effect of the foreign buyer ban on house prices would therefore be proportionally modest. On the other hand, the survey conducted by CMHC 2018 shows the catalytic role of foreign buying in driving up house prices. Though the proportion of home bought by foreign buyers is small, more than half of home buyers believe that foreign buying is the main driver of escalating prices in Vancouver and Toronto. And this is pretty important because the sooner we can get out of the mindset of foreign buyer is the main driver of home prices going up, I'm sure it is one of the component as we have seen, but it's not going to be a major component. The sooner we can get out of this mindset, the sooner we can focus on the real issue at hand of why house prices is so expensive. It's really lack of supply due to restrictive zoning, red tapes, slow building process, and lack of infrastructure, which doesn't entice people to move away from the city. And this is something I also talked about and highlighted because one of the NDP candidate, David Abbey, actually had some pretty good ideas and actionable ideas on how to fix housing issue in Vancouver. So if you haven't already, I would encourage you to check out that video and also maybe visit his platform. Not saying I support or endorse him, I'm just saying that he does have some very valid and actionable points that so far I haven't seen anyone else raise on their platforms. But anyway, my final conclusion on the government policy is that it has little to no effect on the demand side. So with that out of the way, we're going to move over to the supply side and we're going to start with inventory. Now, obviously, inventory is rising with sales being only half the amount compared to a year ago. What was interesting that while there is a lot of active listing, new listing have dropped quite a bit year on year. Now, this trend does make sense if you think about it. If people wanted to sell, they would have listed and sold in the first half of 2022 already. If they weren't going to sell in the first 6 months, then they're probably not likely going to sell in the second half of 2022 because rates are even higher than before, which means price is even lower than before. There's really no incentive to sell unless there's some sort of personal issue going on. Now, however, that doesn't mean that inventory is going to stay stagnant or rise very slowly. I actually think that inventory is still going to go up pretty quickly, and the main reason is due to pre-sale market. On the screen, you can see that we are seeing a record number of under construction for new builds in 2022 across Canada. And the reason why it's so much higher than before is because a lot of these under construction are actually partly pent up buildings that haven't been completed because of COVID. And now going into 2022 and 2023, they are going to be completed. Now, even though these new builds are likely going to have a buyer already before these were starting to build through pre-sale, it is also likely that a good chunk of them will be unable to complete during completion. This is either due to a foreign buyer tax, or I'm not sure if foreign buyer bans will affect them. If they're foreign buyers from before, could they even complete? I'm not sure. I haven't really checked the rules. They also have to face a higher stress test at the 7%, which means they may not even qualify for the mortgage, or they qualify for the mortgage, but the building has lost value compared to when they first purchased, and the bank with a new assessment is unwilling to lend at the full amount, so they might be pressed to either put more down payment or they simply cannot complete. So for 2023, I do expect more and more of these last minute reassignment being offered on the market, or they would complete and then they would want to very quickly sell them because they might be borrowed under a mix of private loan and bank loans. But do keep in mind that these kind of inventory that will be added on are likely going to be condos and townhomes. So what that means is while supply will increase, I do expect a lot of new buyers to gobble them up as quickly as possible. So we actually may not see too much price fluctuation or downward pressure, even though inventory keeps going up for these property types. This is something I'll explain in more detail in the later part of the video. Now, finally, let's quickly touch up on the rental market itself. For last year, I'm pretty sure you're aware that we have seen a high rental record every single month for the whole 2022. Now, partly this is due to a higher population growth, so a higher demand, And partly is it due to a higher interest cost, so the landlord trying to pass the cost as much as possible to the renters. Now with such high rent, it actually makes it a lot less attractive to put the condo onto the market right now, because rent is a lot less elastic versus mortgage rate. Mortgage rates can change over time. If we hit a big recession, tomorrow they might cut rate 2%, like who knows. But for rent, once you have decided at a higher rent, once someone agrees to it, it's put into a 1-year lease at least. And during that time, you're not going to lower the rent. And even at the lease end, it will be very difficult for you to argue for a lower rent once you're willing to pay at a certain level. Which means if the investors can weather these kind of rates hikes and a negative cash flow, once these things have calmed down and a slight pivot happens, their current high rent may generate them a positive cash flow instead, which makes putting the property onto the market right now a lot less enticing. But with supply keep increasing, especially for condo and townhome, does that mean we are going to see a continuous price drop going into 2023? For me, I think it's going to be a mixed bag, especially across different property types. I think detached is going to continue to fall, especially for the ones that are further away from the city core. Now, supply for detached should not drastically increase for 2023, but it will slowly add up as more and more of these 1.5% mortgage matures eventually and roll into a 5%. Some of these homeowners will be very hard pressed or pressured to put their house onto the market because they just don't want to handle that kind of payment. Demand will continue to be very low simply because people cannot qualify for a mortgage $1 million plus. A half decent home in Vancouver or Toronto is still around at least 1.5, closer to the $2 million mark right now. And unless buyers have $1 million down pay ready, and unless they make 200 to 300K of household income, they would be very difficult to qualify for $1 million plus in mortgage. So I think detached for 2023 is not going to be a buyer market, it's not going to be a seller market, it's going to be more of a nobody's market. At current rate, logically, sellers should lower their price further to really meet where the demand side is. But again, selling a home or a home ownership is a very emotional thing, and after knowing how much their house could have worth in 2020 or 2021, it would be very difficult to convince a majority of them that they should list at a much lower price even after their current reductions. So I think for the detached market, it would be a struggle between, does the rate drop first, or does majority of the sellers accept the reality that their home no longer worth as much first? And because most of these detached homes are likely bought for self-use and not really for rental, I would say most people are gonna be continuously stubborn about their price, and if they can't sell it, they would just rather not sell it and just have it on the listing for like 300 days or whatever. So for majority market, I do expect a stalemate, but that doesn't mean you will not find gems inside. If you're a Vancouver, I would keep a close eye on things like ZOT. They do a good job of reporting what has the biggest drop so far, which house has reduced their price recently. If you pay attention to those in your area, I'm sure you can find one or two that have dropped significantly more than the others because of maybe some personal reasons. It just depends on if that's the property you actually want and if you can win against other potential buyers who are also eyeing the same thing. Now for condo and townhome, I think it's not going to drop any further. Even if it is, it's going to be very slightly. In fact, for condo, I do expect maybe the second half of 2023, it may actually rebound and the price may be actually slightly trending up. And the reason why is because, again, it's a stress test. A lot of people, maybe a majority of the buyers, are being priced out of the target home that they originally had in 2020 or 2021. So unless they're willing to wait for later time for a cheaper stress test or cheaper interest rate, they would be pushed to a lower end of the option. So for detached home, big detached, maybe they now have to get a small detached. Small detached will now have to look for a big townhome. Big townhome look for a small townhome. Small townhome look for a 3-bedroom. 3 looks for 2. 2 looks for 1. And 1 may or may not look for studio, because I think that's where people draw the line. They rather not buy if it's a studio sometimes. So we're gonna see more and more people push towards the lower end of the market price-wise, which would mean there's going to be more and more demand for 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom especially. So this is why I think regardless of supply increasing because of pre-built, smaller the unit is, the more resilient it is to a price drop, and they may actually get a price increase by the end of 2023. Also, with the hundreds of thousands of PR we just talked about, any new PR or new immigration into Canada are likely gonna be younger family or closer to retirement. Established family with adult kids are much less likely going to immigrate over here because of the job stability and the higher income in their home country. So at the end, the younger family and the people closer to retirement are likely going to prefer a smaller unit anyway. They probably don't want a big detached home because they can't afford it, or they don't want to, do with all that finance. They need cash more liquid, which is another reason I believe we're going to see a huge demand for smaller units. Alright, so with all the info that I've just said, for new buyers, if you're feeling you're being priced out of the market once again because of a higher stress test or just higher inflation, I would actually recommend you to look into the pre-sale market once again. Now, I know I've said in the past that I do not like pre-sale market, and I still, stand by my point, but one of my biggest gripe was about we don't need to look at pre-sale because it's still relatively expensive. When everything has dropped 5 to even 20%, just look outside and get something right now. That is actually not very true anymore for two reasons. Number one, rates are way higher versus the time I've said this comment, which means that you probably are not able to get a mortgage anyway. So even though they have dropped in price, you probably cannot make an offer anyway. And second, most pre-sale are now also doing horrendously in terms of sales. So they have begun to offer some pretty attractive incentives, anywhere from straight up discounts to skipping, 2-3 years of management fees, to additional parking, locker space, or all of the above. So if you have a target size or certain area that you feel like you cannot get them anyway because of the high rates, maybe now you can look for a pre-sale that will complete in 3 to 4 years, so you can make the down payment now and then hope that in 3 to 4 years the interest rate environment should be more tame than now, which means you're likely going to be able to qualify for the mortgage that you hope for, and also you're likely going to have a higher wage compared to 3 years ago. But at the end of the day, I still feel like pre-sale is a little bit more risky than something that's existing that you can check right away. So on that front, you need to make sure you can tolerate that kind of risk, do your research on the developer, and then make your decision from there. Alright, so that's everything I wanted to share today. Now next week or next video, I plan to probably talk a little bit more about REITs, because I know a lot of people want exposure into the real estate market, but they feel nervous about buying a second condo. So I want to talk more about REITs. And in my other videos, I would also like to share my experience of kind of being a private lender, lending money to another individual, how that research process came about, how the negotiation come about, and what is the current result so far, and also some downsides that you need to be aware of. Let me know if you have other topics that you want me to talk about. Comment in the section down below. Also tell me, what do you think about the housing market 2023? Do you still see a huge drop coming, or you think we have plateaued already, or we might even have a slight rebound at the end of the year? Let me know in the comment down below. And if you like these kind of videos, I do upload them 8:30 EST. Maybe not every Tuesday anymore because, obviously with wife pregnant, maybe every 2 weeks. I hope to do at least once every 2 weeks. But make sure you hit the like button and also subscribe to the channel and click the bell button to get all the notifications in the future. Alright, this is Jackie Cole. I hope you found this interesting. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!